So last time we started in Psalm 142, right? And it was a psalm written to deal with depression or situations that overwhelm you, or you're stressed out maybe. And it was meant to be an instructive psalm. That's what we talked about last week. And we talked about how he was in a cave emotionally and physically, right? When he wrote this psalm. And sometimes we get there, right? And the whole point that we brought out last week was that sometimes we just need to cry out or bellow out or thunder out to God, right? You don't keep it inside. Tell him how you feel. Be honest about it. Sometimes we want to just, kind of skip over telling him how we feel. But we really need to be honest with him how we feel. And that'll help us when we're dealing with these emotions. So we're going to start where we left off. Let's start in verse 3 of Psalm 142. When my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. In the way in which I walk, they have secretly set a snare for me. So David's confessing his deepest feelings is what's happening, and he's feeling overwhelmed about what's going on. So the original Hebrew word for overwhelmed means David feels enveloped, where you're surrounded, faint, or weak because of the situation. Do you ever feel like that when you're getting overwhelmed? You just feel like you're just so enclosed, and you get really weak and just don't feel like you can do anything, right? So his emotions are taking him down, and they're even affecting his body and his thoughts, which is what happens when you get depressed or overwhelmed, right? Medical studies have shown over time that depression does a lot to your body, to your mind, to your emotions, to how you handle things. It'll affect your mood, your sleep, it'll affect your body health in general, it'll affect your behavior, and it'll affect your cognitive abilities, the way you think, right? Depression affects a lot of things, and sometimes we don't even recognize those symptoms when they pop up in our life. Some things are real obvious, when you see you or you see someone else really mopey or down, in their expression, their facial expression, you might see that they're depressed. Are you okay?
Yeah. The pen went. It's Christina's fault.
So I think I put on your paper a list of the things to be aware of for depression, because not everybody's aware that some of these things you may think are just, part of life, but no, they could be a sign of you being depressed or overwhelmed severely. And I know in times past I've experienced different ones of these. Sometimes you'll experience one of these, or maybe you'll experience multiple ones of these symptoms. And it's good to know these symptoms for yourself, but for others you're around, because you can help someone if you see them doing these things. Now, sometimes I'm irritable.
No.
Now, it could be just because I'm irritable.
That was me on Sunday.
Carolyn was a prime example of someone having an issue on Sunday.
Is it because they canceled the game?
No. Oh, thank goodness they canceled. I was glad.
That's what I was thinking.
That was like one less thing.
Yeah.
So. But sometimes I've been irritable because my emotions are messed up because of whatever's stressing me out or depressing me, and it comes out in a form of irritability. But sometimes it's just normal crankiness, and sometimes it's not. So you need to be aware. I've dealt with the sleep issues because of being stressed out or depressed, and your lack of concentration, that's an interesting one. Or when you're overwhelmed, you're constantly thinking about the problem over and over again, and you don't let it go, which carries over, of course, into the night when you're trying to sleep. But the other things like apathy, you might not recognize as much, just that apathetic feeling, you don't even realize you're getting caught up into that. Now, and I've had the excessive hunger.
Right.
And the loss of appetite. I have several levels of stress. The first one is pig out.
Right.
I start eating everything in sight. And then I have the other side. If I get to the next level, I am not eating at all. Totally not eating at all. So I kind of like that level because it's better for me. It's a weight loss thing, but you don't want to go too far, because when that happened to me in college, I became anorexic.
Uh-oh.
So I was very thin, And I was the first person that ever got married that had a problem fitting into their gown because they were too thin. So that was a unique situation. Most women are trying to lose weight. I was trying to gain weight so that I could at least be decent in my wedding gown. But anyway, so if you or anybody you know is experiencing any of these symptoms, it's a good time to start thinking about, why am I having these symptoms? What's going on? Sometimes you don't even realize, I've even, not to pick on my husband, but there have been times when he's stressed out about something and he doesn't even realize he's stressed out about it. It's more of a subconscious thing. So you need to think about this. This is what I see going on in your life. Maybe perhaps, you're having an issue with this, and he has to stop and think about it. Well, maybe I am, It's sometimes hard to admit when you're having a problem. So, but you really do need to think about, why am I awake all the time at night? Is it just a typical health problem you're having, or is there something keeping you up at night? Something waking you up or keeping your thoughts going? So it's a good time to talk to God. Number one, like we talked about last week, let him know. And even just praying, ask him to reveal to you what may be bothering you. Sometimes that's what we need to do, because maybe we just don't totally understand it. What is bothering us? The other thing is, get a friend. You got friends in this group and in this church, and then maybe your personal lives outside of church. I know some wacko ones over here, right? Go on a trip.
Yeah, go on a trip.
Relieve your stress. Go on a trip. But you need to talk to someone. The problem is, a lot of times we isolate. Not a good thing. I've seen some of the people I know isolate. And I've done it myself. There have been times when I was just so stressed out, I felt like I was better off at home alone, because I didn't want to express my facial emotions, or whatever to somebody. I don't want them to see what's going on with me. Don't do that. You're always better off getting around people. It's hard, but it's a time when you do need to talk to someone. So find a friend, talk to someone. And then, of course, if you get to that point, especially if you're having health problems, talk to the doctor.
Yes, definitely.
Don't keep it in and get your blood pressure skyrocketing and have a heart attack over what's going on. You need to take care of your body. But sometimes you need to do all three. Not that I'm an expert on this, but I just know from my own personal experiences, I was far better off when I came out of my isolation and came to church and got around people. It may have been hard, but it was better for me in the end, I know. And then, of course, I have known people that got to the point of suicidal thoughts, and we don't want our friends to get to that point. And we don't want ourselves to get to that point either. So we need to find help. Don't be afraid to find help. And watch for your friends. Contact them if you see that they're isolating themselves, or if you see that they're down, start talking to them. Did you start to say something?
I was just gonna say, I don't see whistling up there at all.
Whistling should be a problem?
That's what
Symptom?
That's what the neurologist said, because I was whistling.
Oh, that's right.
I had anxiety.
So you were releasing it through your whistling.
And I said, no, I don't. And I hummed. Yes, he said, whistling and humming, that's a classic. And I said,
like happy thing.
I know.
I know.
Said, I'm whistling a praise song from Sunday. He was writing notes and I was whistling. I totally don't agree with that one.
I could see if you had a nervous whistle, but if you're joyous, there's a whole other side of it.
What's a nervous?
Our mind recognizes the whistling as a comfort, like something that's free and clear, and it reduces the anxiety, right? Like
Yeah.
a kid whistle and
Right.
sing, and it's fun, and it's mellow, and it's not agitating at all, and so maybe that is a protective mode before you break, like your mind.
I remember Blanca said, I can always hear you coming. You're whistling in the office.
When she used to go make copies, I knew she was coming because she'd be whistling on her way.
Nobody was there. I didn't know anybody. It's just I've always whistled and hummed.
Yeah. And that's some people, because Terry's the same way. He hums a lot and whistles and stuff. What? What's wrong?
No, because you're probably.
That's right.
Times when you
He
feel like it
hums,
was
he-
comforting,
he's
right?
always
Yeah,
singing and
I
humming.
got relaxed,
that.
and so maybe your
But you don't even
mind
know what he's
recognized that, and so when
Yes.
you were stressed, it was, I don't know,
Okay.
Huh.
Here-
Well, self-soothing.
Here, I'm gonna pick on my husband again, because he hums a lot, right? Or, singing some tune that's coming in his head, right? Well, sometimes it comes out like the Rain Man. Do you remember the Rain Man?
Yes.
And he was driving over the bridge and he would just,
Yes.
he was mimicking this. And I said, what do you, what, are you the Rain Man over there? And that's happened more than once. It's just kind of become a joke, because it's like, I can't quite identify what you're humming over there. But anyway, I could see if there was some kind of nervousness in the way you were doing it, but I would see it more of as a joy coming out, or a release, kind of like what you're talking about. So that's kind of funny your doctor said that to you. I mean, does he know you well? I mean.
Oh, no, it was our first appointment.
Oh, wow,
And Steve
okay.
says, no. We were all in there together.
Oh,
He was
good,
writing
good,
notes.
good for him.
And I was just, a praise song got.
You know what you need to do?
earworms stuck
You
in my
need,
head.
you need to get the letter of what he wrote about you.
Well, he was copying notes that I had from my.
Oh,
But he might have written that down.
you need to ask,
Because he was serious.
because then he probably
Classic.
was.
It's a classic.
It's fun to read what those specialists say.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
So, Blanca, I've been anxious all my
Since I've
life.
known you.
Since you
Pretty
remember
funny. Okay, so David's recognized his own issues, that he's overwhelmed. I mean, he's being honest with God. He's telling, when my spirit was overwhelmed with me, he's being honest with God and stating this. So, but what else did he say in verse 3? He said, when my spirit was overwhelmed within me, then you knew my path. So his mind kind of flips all of a sudden, right in the middle of confessing how he's feeling to God. He acknowledges that God knows everything. It's funny, this keeps coming up. David's very much aware of this. He keeps bringing it up in his different Psalms. He knows God knows where he's at and what he's going through. He knows he's stuck in that cave. He knows that Saul is after him. He knows his situation, right? And David's remembering that. And that's what we need to remember. We need to recognize that God knows exactly what path we're on, what's going on around us, and where our life is heading. So you could tell, because even it says this, they have secretly set a snare for me. He knows his life's on the line, and he knows God knows that too. So we can be comforted by knowing that God understands what each of us is facing in life. He knows what path we are on in life. He knows exactly what's going on. That should comfort us. Should help us not feel as alone, because he's right there. He knows what's going on. Everybody got it? That's a long one. Okay? Okay, so we are not alone. He is there with us on our path. We talked about this a lot in our Psalm 139 that we were studying. We have a tendency when we get overwhelmed or stressed out or depressed to feel like we are all alone, and we're not. We've got to remember God's right there with us. And there's some verses about that I pulled up. Deuteronomy 31:8. These are good ones to think about. Think about when you're feeling alone. And the Lord, He is the one who goes before you. He will be with you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. Do not fear nor be dismayed. And then Joshua 1:9, which we should have just had in our Joshua study, right? Have I not commanded you? Be strong and of good courage. Do not be afraid nor be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. The Holy Spirit's living in you. He's with you. You're not alone. Matthew 28:20, teaching them to observe all things that I have commanded you, and lo, I am with you always. This is Jesus' promise to us, even to the end of the age. Through it all, He's with us.
Last thing he said.
Last thing He said before He flew off. Right? John 14:16-17, and I will pray the Father, and He will give you another helper, that He may abide with you forever. He's with us. The Spirit of truth, whom the world cannot receive, because it neither sees Him nor knows Him. But you know Him, for He dwells with you and will be in you. So you can never say you're alone or that God has left you. It's right there with you. So that should help encourage and strengthen you if you dwell on some of these thoughts about this. So let's go on to the next verse in Psalm 142. Look on my right hand and see, for there is no one who acknowledges me. Refuge has failed me. No one cares for my soul. So now he's feeling really bad for himself, right? He's in that cave. He thinks that his refuge in that cave has failed him. He's got no one with him at this point. No one with him, so he's feeling very alone. And he's fearing for his life while he's in that cave. Think about how you would feel, if you were in that cave and you knew you were a hunted man and nobody's there to even help you, right? There's no way you can defend yourself off against the king and his army. But the one thing is that he recognizes that God's with him. And he's talking to God while he's in that cave. And that's probably the best place for him to be, is to be talking to God in that cave. Depending on God. He can only depend on God. And that's what we need to do when we're feeling that way. We need to depend on God. But look what he wrote later. Years later, after all this has been resolved and he becomes king, he wrote Psalm 20. And this is what he said in verses 6 through 9. Now I know that the Lord saves his anointed. He will answer him from his holy heaven with the saving strength of his right hand. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. They have bowed down and fallen, but we have risen and stand upright. Save, Lord, may the king answer us when we call. So he's about to go out to battle, and he's saying that even though we're going to battle, he's got men and soldiers, but he knows not to trust in the human resources as a way to fight this battle, that he needs to trust in God. You have to depend on God. It's real easy to look at what resources you might think you have, but that's not where your real strength lies. It's in God fighting those battles for you, whatever you're going through. He's the one that's going to take care of you. So during the battles we face in life, we need to depend on God and his weapons, not man's help or weapons. Instead, seek man's help as God leads, not as your first solution. Isn't that what we do when we're feeling overwhelmed or have a problem in front of us? We just immediately start trying to fix it. What solutions can we do to take care of this? But we need to go to God first and ask his wisdom. How should we take care of this situation? Whatever's stressing us out or wrong. What does he want us to do under his leadership? So what battles do you face? Some of us have relationship issues, financial problems. There are mean people in our lives.
Grandchildren.
I didn't have that on my list. I'm going to have to go back and correct that. Grandchildren. My grandchildren are still pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except,
Yeah, I know.
You don't know what
Quit
Joe is
bragging.
doing all the time.
That's true. That's true. There's some that are out of my sight, so I'm not quite catching all of that. But, maybe you've lost a loved one and that's what's overwhelming you, or maybe you're having major health problems. I know a lot of us have been having those different battles on and off. But whatever it is, we have to depend on God to get us through it, whether it's fixing a relationship issue or whether it's dealing with doctors and treatments or whether it's just kind of overcoming some stupid financial problem.
I was listening to Joyce Meyer this past week, and she said, if you're making a plan and then asking God to bless it, you're doing it backwards.
Exactly.
And I thought, that's so true.
Exactly.
Ask God first and then make the plan.
That's funny.
the direction.
That's funny because I was listening to some other ladies talk, Christian leader women, and they were talking almost the same thing. Yeah, because they were talking about like things they felt God had called them to do in life, and yet it hadn't happened yet. Sometimes it's slow. It takes longer to get there than what you think. He may still have you to do whatever he's told you, but they said, same point. Don't try to fix it. Get there faster. Don't worry about it if you're not there. You do it God's way. You do as he leads, not you don't try to get to where you think you're supposed to be. And that's real critical. those chariots aren't the way to fight the battle, which is basically what, David was saying. So, I wanted to remind you, we each have different battles. Sometimes we have multiple battles going on in our life, different things that are dragging us down or overwhelming us or stressing us out. A lot of us have maybe already gone through what someone else has already gone through. In this room, we maybe have experienced the same things. That's why we need each other, because it may be that we'll mention what we're going through. We need to be honest with each other. Then there might be someone who will step up and say, hey, I did this already. I've already gone through, this is what I experienced, and you share a little bit of your wisdom or what God taught you through it. Or you might give them advice how to handle their situation. Or at least it's somebody to pray with you because they totally understand how you're feeling, because they've already been there. So it's important. That's why you need your friends. You need to talk to people about whatever is going on. This whole, this is one of my songs that Cassie Crown does, the plastic people, plastic shiny people. You can't go to church and be a plastic shiny person, because that's what a lot of us do. We go and we sit there and we act like we're perfect, or nothing's going on. I don't have any problems. Everything's great, and maybe for some people there are those times in your life where things are great, but there are a lot of us that aren't, and we're too busy pretending all the time that everything's great when we really need to reach out and talk to somebody and share. Let down the plastic face and let them see who you are. I always was struck by that song when they did that, because I think that's a very true song. Very true. Yeah.
I'm going to give you an example of that, because you sitting in my chair over there on Tuesdays, and Laquita's sitting over there, and when I first got diagnosed with fibro, I was teaching, and there was another teacher there who had fibro, and she was always down, like she was just down. Not physically, yes, physically, couldn't do things, but anyway, so I thought, oh gosh, this is going to be my life. That's kind of sad and depressing, and all I was going through was the pain, not the down part. But so coming here on Tuesdays, Laquita sits right there, and she has given me more encouragement about how to handle fibro than anybody else, any of the doctors or anything. Just by saying, well, you know what? Go home and take a nap. Go home and, get up and take a nap, and then eat, and then go take a nap. But that's just an example. Laquita has been really helpful to me.
Because she's been through it.
Because she's been right beside me.
I'm on battery runner.
Oh no, you didn't get to hear. We'll tell you later.
I'll have to tell you tomorrow.
But yeah, that's why it's important to get together,
Yelled at me.
and different things like a fellowship time, like we do it at craft time, is a good time to get together and talk about stuff, or Bible study, or just casually you call someone up, But it's good to share our experiences. If we don't ever tell anybody we've been through something, whether it's dealing with a kid that's been a rough kid, right? I don't,
Willful.
a what?
Willful.
A willful kid?
Willful.
Yeah, maybe willful, but maybe someone else in this room has too, And we've all been through different things, or maybe some of us have gone through cancer. We can help tell someone else what we've experienced. I've seen Claudia do that, because that can become very overwhelming when you get diagnosed with cancer. And Claudia's always, every time she hears about someone, she tries to help them and encourage them and give them advice, the things that helped her. That's what we need to do for each other, help each other along, whatever it is, whether it's emotional.
It says in Corinthians, you are given sometimes, they were given those sufferings so that you can help someone else to go through the same suffering.
Exactly.
God instructs us to do it.
Exactly. So anyway, that's one of my advice is to you. Don't isolate, talk to somebody.
I'm happy you said that, because that's how it used to always be in church, and it's not so much like that no more, I don't think.
It's
So
not,
it's a good reminder.
it's not like that, so it's.
So much, that's my
Where
personal
you have to
opinion.
put on your perfect face.
Well, you don't see it even in like before, if your neighbor was something was going on, maybe you send over a meal, or, you know, like even, when people have sick, like those kinds of things. Like you, being a part of all these organizations was just that, like networking, to have people that care about you, check on you, whatever.
Right.
And I think we've gotten away from that as a society.
We have. We're too busy. We're so wrapped up in our own problems or our own schedules that we don't have time for that fellowship, for that helping one another, for that sharing. We don't make the time. We don't. I've gotten so busy. I mean, we used to have people over for dinner. Don't have the time anymore. I can't clean my house, but
And I think,
you know.
like for me, like I do this, and so I think I've passed over to my family. Like everything's a big to-do, right? I want it to be perfect, so it's a big to-do.
Right.
And so now that my kids are having kids and they're planning like birthday parties, I see the stress and overwhelming, and I'm having to tell them like, they don't even care, just get pizza and juice. Like,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
and whatever, right? And so it's learning that again too, because we try to do everything, and like when it comes down to it, it's just about the fellowship with each other. And
Right.
It really does.
You don't need the fancy
There's
stuff.
not one person in this room that overachieves like that either. Not one other person.
No.
Okay, if everybody believes that, then don't.
No, yeah, we all want stuff to be nice.
You wanna see my living room right now? It's got VBS stuff in it, it's got Cinco de Mayo decorations in it.
Okay, so back to David alone in his cave. He's praying this prayer, right? And he feels no one supporting him, and he's facing death soon, so he's in a really bad place. So do you remember what we read last time in 1 Samuel 22, 1 and 2? Let me read that again to you. So the prayer that we're reading in this one psalm was written before this happened. So David therefore departed from there and escaped the cave of Adullam. And then he says this prayer, right? So when his brothers and all his father's house heard it, they went down there to him, right? And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them, and there were about 400 men with him. So he goes in this cave in a bad situation, prays this prayer about being alone. What did God do?
Sent
He sent all the depressing.
Sent 400 people. Yeah, he sent his family, most importantly, who he needed. All those brothers he had. What did he have? 6, 7 brothers? Yeah, I think he was the 7th. And so he sent all his brothers, all their family, all the men, and all these 400 people that were unhappy with King Saul and the things he was doing in the kingdom. So I think God answered him, right?
Misery loves company.
Yeah. Well, he's no longer alone. He's got his family.
Had common ideals.
Yeah, exactly. They disagreed with the way King Saul was running the kingdom. So God sent him an army, a small army, but he sent him an army to protect him. So he's no longer alone. He's got some protection now with weapons. And his family who want to back him up. They saw him anointed king long before this. They know he's supposed to be the king, and they want him to be king, and they're there to support him. So I think that's pretty cool. That's what happens to us sometimes. We think we're alone, but God's working on it. He's working on it behind the scenes. He's getting them going. So God answered David's prayer about aloneness with family. He sent his family to him. Family support and a small army. I bet he wasn't expecting 400 people to show up knocking on his cave door, right?
Probably not.
And that's what we need. He needed the people. He needed that support.
That always happens too when you don't really, you're not expecting the days. Some days are really harder than other days.
Right.
And lo and behold, this one right here will
Suddenly shows up.
just call or something, and it's like, how did you know I really needed you right now,
Right.
And, but I think that God, sends her to me when I need her.
See, he knows everything that's going on.
Yeah.
He knows what you're going. Even if you haven't expressed it to him, he knows what you need. Right? Then look what happened in verse 5 of 1 Samuel. It says, "Now the prophet Gad said to David, 'Do not stay in the stronghold. Depart and go to the land of Judah.' So David departed and went into the forest of Herath." God sent a spiritual advisor along with the family. He sent Gad. and an army. So David was no longer physically alone or spiritually alone in that sense, because he now had a spiritual advisor. He sent him a prophet. I can't remember if Gad was one of the Levites. I'd have to look it up. But anyway, that's what he needed. He needed someone spiritual there to encourage him on while he's in that cave. And he gave him an assignment. God says, time to get out of the cave. Saul's coming, let's go. So he sent him a message via Gad. Let's get out of the cave, let's get heading on. So they're heading on to a new place, right? So what else did he say in Psalm 142:4? He says, no one cares for my soul. He was so down and so low at this point, feeling so alone when he said this prayer before all that happened with the family showing up. You know, he'd gotten to that point where he thought no one loved him, no one cared for him, no one was going to help him. We get to that place sometimes because we're focused on whatever's upsetting us, whatever's overwhelming us, what's depressing us, that we feel like no one's there. And we should know better. We should know we have family around. But boy, God proved David wrong, didn't he? He sent his whole family and an army, right? I think that's pretty cool. But sometimes that happens. I know I've done it myself. When you get to that really low spot, you start almost imagining things. So it's like an imaginary path you're on. You start the what ifs, or you start thinking, well, no one cares. I'm the only one that feels this way. Nobody else at church likes me anymore. You know, whatever you start thinking about, it's like the devil starts planting things in your head, and you start focusing on that stupid thought, whatever it is that's gotten you so low. And it's not God's thoughts. Right? And if you asked around, there's plenty of women at this church or wherever in your life that would probably tell you you're wrong. I care about you. But we don't want to go, that's where we isolate, and we don't go out, and we don't ask, we don't seek. We don't go to those people we've had a relationship with all that time. We just start feeling all alone. We've got to step out.
I think sometimes, for me, like last week I was feeling quite hopeless, and logically I knew it wasn't true, but I couldn't shake it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that was when I reached out to people and asked for prayer, that they didn't know what they were praying about, but I just needed it.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I have prayer warriors in my, church, so.
You got past it. You made that
Oh,
good first step, right?
But I knew all along it was wrong, but I couldn't quite get past it, yeah.
We all do that, and I don't know if the devil's
So
just
bad.
egging us on, keeping us in that thought pattern that's not correct. We should know better, but we just keep, feeling bad and thinking, no, I'm all alone, but we're not. So, but you did the right thing. You stepped out and asked for prayer. That was what you needed to do.
I knew I needed prayer.
Yeah.
I needed prayer beyond what I could pray on my own, I needed some more.
Yeah, I was glad you did that, because we don't know. We have no clue. Yeah. Unless we're always there knocking on your door. Hi, Lori. Yeah, we're not going to know.
There'd be no reason for anyone to know unless I ever
Right.
could know.
Yeah. So, most of the time we get focused on the negatives, the negative possibilities. We start trying to figure out what we think is going to happen, and we start dwelling on it, worrying about it, getting down about it. But that's not where we need to go. We need to step out somehow from that. And we've talked about this before, but I'm going to bring it up again. Because it's important to it's important to our faith how we handle things, and it's important to our physical and emotional health as well, how we handle it. Because what we think about, what we put in our head, or what we talk to ourselves about affects us. It dictates things in our bodies and our minds and how things go in our life, right? So I know I harp on this a lot. We've got to be careful about what we think about. And I always bring up this verse because it's one of my favorite verses. And I try to memorize it, at least get the concepts of it if you can't memorize all of it, but it's a good one. We know this one, Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there's any virtue, and if there's anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. We have to think on these things, the good things that are around us, the good blessings, the things that God's done for us. The good things are going on in the world, the good things in your family. Whatever, change your thought focus, because I know I've done it. You think on those negative things, you keep dwelling on it over and over again, whatever's bothering you, and you just go down this wrong path, right? And that's what leads to all the other problems. So if you start changing your focus, you'll have a better time of it. So even if the things around us appear to be all bad, that bare minimum, focus on the good things about God, His character traits, right? The good things about God that you know, what He has done for you. You know He's done things for you in the past, right? And and focus on how He's on your path in life with you, that He knows what you're going through. Think about those things. That's the first place to start. Start thinking about God when you're in the middle of the negative thoughts or the bad situation. That's where you start. Start with God. So like with Lori, she sought prayer. That was her way of seeking God in that situation. Everybody got it? Okay. So then, after you do that, then think of the blessings that you know are in your life. And you know you all have some. There are always blessings that we just have to open our eyes to. You may have a bunch of things wrong in your life, things that are bugging you and upsetting you, but there are still blessings even in the midst of that. We just have to look around and think. It can be the simplest thing. I have food on the table. I have family members. Whatever. You think about, just look, open your eyes. What are the blessings? We did that study, gosh, I don't know how many years ago. That Ann Voss camp, the 10,000 blessings or whatever it was called. It was a unique study, but it was a good one for making you think about the blessings in your life, the things to be grateful for. She said, like she's washing dishes. I remember her saying this, washing dishes. And I think it was the bubbles. The bubbles. Even just something simple like that turned her thoughts away from whatever else she's thinking about. Even that's a little piece of joy. The bubbles were kind of joyous to her. So look around, open your eyes when you're in the middle of these situations. There's something good. God's done something good. Maybe you can still walk. Whatever it is.
Oh, shoot, go ahead.
I'm a living example of how God blesses, as I said before. Just being in rehab all that time, I could have become depressed easily because all around me are these poor people, and I probably was one of the oldest there. And I thought, so many of these people don't have hope. They don't, some of them don't have family. And I thought, I'm not going to mope around here and feel sorry for myself.
Amen.
I'm going to try to let God's light shine for me for a friendly word, or try to get somebody to talk who just sits there. It's really heartbreaking. And it sure opened my eyes.
You saw your blessings in your life, right?
Yeah. I could feel sorry for myself, but I don't. I was really blessed.
You know, Joanne, Pastor used you as an object lesson in a sermon. Was it last week before last?
Last
He
week.
was talking about how positive you were.
Yeah, it was last week.
And joyful.
That was very sweet. But my heart just breaks for those people, because here I am alert and can be even smart-mouthed.
Feisty.
Feisty. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. We're learning dark secrets now. And what were you going to say, Debbie?
Oh, I was just gonna say, one way I deal with bad things are, I write them down. Yeah. It's like I get it out, put it on paper. Sometimes I send letters, sometimes I put it in a file, sometimes I just throw it away. But But the things like that go over my, you know, like we're talking about in the night, and you get stressed about, like by the third night, you know, God's saying, you better get that out on paper, get it out of your mind, and it really helps me.
But do you get rid of the paper?
Sometimes I give it to the people who I need to give it to in order to let them understand how hurt I was or what happened. Sometimes, like, and that happened when I was teaching, I'm gonna look at Blanca, but she was never the one. But I mean,
She never got a letter.
I didn't, back then, you know, I knew I would have gotten called in for harassment or something if I would say something like that. It's just, and it's not like I'm cussing out people, but sometimes I just need to let people know, this is what I'm going through and I can't take it anymore, and then I throw it away. Or I say something. But I have trouble saying things. Like, I tend to cry, and that's why your excessive crying got to me. I tend to cry when I talk to people.
Me too.
So,
That's what I like to
I used to
You
email
write things
myself
down?
in the middle of the night when I was working, and that something at work would not, so I'd get my phone and send myself an email so that I could read it in the morning when I got to work.
Yeah,
because
there
I
you
couldn't
go.
just stop
It
and
just-
think about it.
yeah, it takes away the negative, and then you can be clear to do the positive.
Well, I would just suggest, like we talked about the Give It to God box last week, that you get rid of it. If you write it down, deal it, don't keep rewriting it or whatever, just write it down once, pray about it, and get rid of it.
Let go.
So that way,
and let God.
yeah, let go of it.
And let God.
Because if you keep it, if you're keeping it, not throwing it away, you always have that chance of looking back up and stirring up the feelings, you know?
I've never done that.
I mean, for me,
It was just always like, in
yeah.
the file. I don't know.
She has
Because
On everyone.
well, one example, silly example I could give of that. When I was young, a teenager, I don't know what I was maybe at that point, could have been 15, I don't know. We raised cattle, and I was pretty sure mosquito abatement had just killed my calf. And I was very upset about it, but you know, you fight mosquito abatement. But anyway, I wrote a nasty letter to them at that age. I kept a copy for myself, mailed one off to them. Of course, you know, they did not want to accept any blame for it. But I still have that letter, and when I looked at it, I found it, I forgot I had it, and I looked at it, it made me mad again. It's like, that stupid mosquito abatement people killing my calf, costing me money, and killing my baby. But anyway. So, anyway, that's what I'm saying, like, when you keep stuff, it might stir up feelings, so it might be good to get rid of it, just at least in my case, you know.
I've got an old set of encyclopedias
Uh-huh.
I had since I was a kid. My parents got when I was a kid, and one time I was going through this encyclopedia, and there was a paper that I had written, like
One of
Debbie,
our
just
nasty
like,
letters.
well, it wasn't
Or-
a letter, it was just how woe is me kind
Yes.
of thing I had written and stuck in this, and I saw it like, 30 years later.
Oh, yeah, like me.
This was my 11-year-old self, and
Oh.
I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. This is like so much melodrama, you wouldn't even believe.
It's a way of getting it out, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean,
I
if it's good,
You're
you know,
able to sleep
Sometimes
again.
it can make you
if it's good to get it out, you gotta be careful you don't keep going back to it. Get rid of it. Totally, you know, so that you're not, yes, what? No? Okay. We gotta keep Melissa awake here.
Right?
So I put down a quote from an article that this lady had written based on this research, and this was like a section of it. She said, "Science is only now catching up to Scripture." Aren't they always? Every time they do something, they catch up to Scripture. So, which teaches us what is possible through Jesus Christ. Rather than live at the mercy of outside forces, we have a choice. And the most effective way to modify our habitual behaviors and emotional patterns is to let God change the way you think. Research has transformed our understanding of the brain's capacity for change through neuroplasticity. It turns out that our brains are moldable long past childhood. We're always thinking it's hard to learn something later, right? But they're saying that's not true. They can and do change throughout our lives. Thanks to neuroplasticity, changing our thoughts as well as our behaviors and experiences cause us to form new synaptic connections, strengthen existing ones, and weaken others, which you want to weaken the negative ones, right? These new and altered connections result in changes in our behavior. So in other words, what she's trying to tell us is that thinking on God, His Word, His blessing, positive thoughts can help alter our mind. Science is figuring out what Jesus told us in Philippians 4:8. Science is proving, right, with their study of this neuroplasticity. So we will have better emotions, better physical health, a better life if we work on changing the way we think. Work on following 4:8, living it out. That's why it's a good one to memorize. So if we change the way we think, it'll help us get out of depression or anger or sadness or stress or that feeling of being overwhelmed or worried. And a lot of us worry. I know you ladies. Even about little things sometimes we worry. We don't think we're worrying, but really we're worrying, right? And sometimes we worry about big things. But if we change the way we think over time, it'll change our habits and the way we think and the way we feel. So that's what her article was talking about, that science is figuring out what God already knew, what God already told us. So it's better, basically, don't spend your time thinking about those negative things or rehashing the problem or being caught up in that stuff. Switch it to the positive. Switch it to the blessings. Switch it to what God's told you. Change how you think. Because we have a bad habit when we've got a problem of thinking about it over and over again, right? And that just drags you down, right? So, negative thoughts just drag us down physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Basically, that's what the article was talking about and what the Bible's talked about. Got it? So readjust, not read just, but readjust. Depending on how you read that, readjust your focus and think positively, said Charlie in the Wonka play. And remember, Almighty God is right there with you on your path in life. So wait for Him to send your family support if He thinks you need it, or an army. Maybe you need an army. Maybe you needed a financial advisor or a spiritual advisor. Wait for Him to send it. He knows what's best to help you. So you've got to depend on God because He's there in the cave with you and helps you. So now I gave you a couple of things from previous lessons just to have with this one. One from our Joshua where we talked about the worry, right, and scriptures to help you with that. And then I mentioned last week the God box where I had gotten that from a devotion. And so that was where I got that. So I gave that to you too. And we actually had one member of our class go home last week and create a God box.
Who's showing us up?
I wanted to ask that person if I could share it, but I haven't got to yet. They even sent me a picture. So I said, good for you.
Hey, who's not here?
I didn't say they weren't here.
Oh.
So they could be here,
Who's showing
and they
us
may
up?
not be here.
I have to go get my oatmeal box out of the
It's a mystery. But I was very proud of them for taking that step, you know, and it is helpful. You know?
Blessings will go on my fire.
Well, that's another way to do it too. That's like I have my little stones of the things God's done for me to look at once in a while. And of course, every time I dust them, I automatically look at them.